Welcome to part 2 of Dementia Care Principles. I'm Dementia Coach Diane, and I'm sharing my journey as I care for my husband Ben, who's living at home with Lewy body dementia. And we're going over the different principles that will help you in any circumstance if you're caring for a loved one who's going through cognitive changes. So, in this video, I want to take a look at two principles. One is change the environment, not the person, and respond to the need, not just the behavior. So, in terms of the environment, oftentimes our loved ones keep trying to do things that they've done for years, but it's no longer safe, like driving or cooking. And there's no way you're going to talk them out of doing something that they've done safely since they were young. So, certainly in the case of driving, you might need to actually disable the car by disconnecting the battery or have it like taken somewhere for service. In my case, I actually took the battery out of Ben's ignition key. So he still had the keys, but they didn't work. Eventually, I actually asked him if he would be willing to let me drive and give me some driving tips. And that actually worked for us. So now he's always willing to be the passenger. But we have to keep them off the road, and arguing with them isn't going to work. The other thing to consider if they've always cooked and it's no longer safe is to hide things like knives and scissors, things that are not safe for them to use. Or perhaps you might be able to give them a part of the cooking task that they can do. So maybe they can mix the salad together or add some flour to a recipe that you're making or mix up some eggs. If you have to, you can get safety caps for on top of the stove. You can lock cabinets if you have to. The bottom line is you have to keep your loved ones safe, and arguing with them isn't going to work. So change the environment, not the person. The next principle is respond to the need, not just the behavior. Behind every challenging behavior in dementia care is an unmet need. And too often we can write it off and just, say they're just being uncooperative, or we can again argue with them or try to get them to do what's reasonable for us. But that's just not going to work. They oftentimes will have either an emotional need like frustration or fear or boredom, or a physical need like hunger or discomfort because of a temperature change, or perhaps if they're using disposable underwear, they've soiled themselves and they're too embarrassed to say something, or they're not aware. They could also be in pain, but they don't know how to express it. So instead of just reacting and saying, relax and sit down if they're getting agitated or restless, see if you can find out what the need is. And you're going to have to do some detective work, and you may have to try some different things. But you'll be much more successful in the long run than if you just over-medicate them, which happens too often, or write them off as just being uncooperative or challenging. So, for instance, if they're pacing and they're agitated, they could be feeling, anxious or restless. So you might try taking a short walk together, or offering, a soothing activity or, a treat. At one point, Ben was actually leaning over and he was like rushing through the house and running into things and falling. And I'm like, what is going on? And it took me a while, but I finally figured out that he was actually having back pain. So I had to address the source of the problem instead of trying to control him in some way that wouldn't have worked. So again, two really important principles: change the environment, not the person; respond to the need, not just the behavior. All right, so that's part 2. Stay tuned for part 3 on how to deal with dementia care in terms of dementia care principles.